Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming here. It's really a pleasure to see you here in office. As Paweł already introduced me, I'll start from the little anecdote from my life. Not so long ago, I was decorating my apartment. When I came to the a little issues. Stand by. Okay. Now you hear me? Maybe it's better. So not so long ago, I was decorating my apartment. When I go to the famous Swedish shop with the hot dogs, and when I return to home with a bunch of packages which contains my new wardrobes, which has to be assembled, I immediately start to assembling it. I've got the time, I've got all required tools. And when the first wardrobe stands in my room, I was really proud of it. I feel like a real man. I have this sense of accomplishment. But you know what? This excitement quickly went away because I need to assemble 2 more wardrobes. The same process, nothing new to see or to learn, just boring. And what even worse, I didn't have an automatic screwdriver to help me finish it faster. But okay, I finished assembling these 2 wardrobes. I was happy, and then my wife came to that room and said, "But Mateusz, this wardrobe is different than the previous one." Okay, so even if I think that I followed the same instruction, I made mistakes somewhere and I need to reassemble it again. I'm working in Ocado for almost 5 years now, and no, I don't assembling furniture here. But being a member of the team responsible for the infrastructure, I could tell you that there is a lot of similar challenges between assembling furniture from IKEA and building and managing infrastructure. So let's talk about how it looks in Ocado. My colleagues already told you what Ocado does as a company, so I will skip that part. But what I want to tell you what I want to show you is how data lake instance looks from the infrastructure team perspective. Of course, there are a lot of Google Cloud Platform resources. For example, it's a folder in which we have a lot of GCP projects. We have a lot of logs export configured for that. Around it, there is a lot of security policies, and at the end, proper people are assigned to that resources. But to better understand the challenge which we are facing, you need to know that this is a single data lake instance. Each of our retailers, our clients, have their dedicated data lake instance. So, in general, our platform infrastructure looks more like this. So it's a there's a lot of furniture to assemble here. So today I want to tell you how we improve the way of managing it. So let's go back in time. When I joined Ocado, we have only 3 already existed data lakes. The process of creation new one took us about 2 weeks. And what's worse, it was a big epic on our roadmap. It means that it needs to be planned in advance and make the whole team busy. The process of creation alone consists of a lot of manual steps and was semi-automated, only partially semi-automated by some magic scripts, hard to maintain. And during that time, Ocado signed a lot of new deals. So we know that we need to create a lot of new environments. So it was clear that our goal was to improve the way how we create and maintain our environments. I emphasize maintenance here because slower creation, it's not so bad. It just takes some time. But the biggest concern is the consistency between our environments. We want to make sure that our environments, different instances, are very similar and managed in a consistent way. So what we have do? Okay, we decided to use infrastructure as a code approach. It's pretty natural for the infrastructure team. Infrastructure as a code treats code as a source of truth. It speeds up setup of the infrastructure, also minimize the risk of the human error, and also, if done right, it improves infrastructure consistency. Of course, there are many different infrastructure as a code tools, but we decided after some research to use Terraform. And what is Terraform? Terraform is an infrastructure as a code tool designed for managing whole life cycle from creation, from modification to deletion of the infrastructure. It has some very interesting properties. For example, it's declarative and stateful. So we are focusing on what we want to achieve and what we want to have in our infrastructure, not how to achieve that and in which order we should perform some task. Also, thanks to being stateful, it allows using the same code create things and modify it. Terraform also produces so-called execution plans, which are very easy to review and are showing what Terraform will do during the application of changes. And from the perspective of starting using Terraform, the fact that it's agentless and masterless, which means that you don't need to install anything on your infrastructure to start using Terraform, because Terraform using API to manage infrastructure, and you don't need to have a dedicated server because you have only command line client which could be run on demand on your local host. It makes Terraform very easy to use in your company. So let's look at the example. Here it is a definition of the Google BigQuery dataset. Like you see, it looks like JSON, but it's not. It's HashiCorp configuration language. But I am convinced that everybody understands what is happening here. It's a definition of the resource which has some properties, which has some desired properties here. So how it looks like in the workflow. First of all, we are creating a code or modifying it. We are initializing our Terraform. Then we are going to the plan step when the Terraform performs some task and checks what needs to be done to achieve the results. After reviewing the execution plan, and if we are okay with the proposed changes, we are applying the results, and the application and the infrastructure is created or modified. These steps repeated itself. But at the end, if you want to remove our infrastructure, we could also do it using Terraform. So surprisingly, each of these words init, plan, apply, and destroy are just simple Terraform command line commands. So how it looks like, how it works. And from another angle, we have a .tf configuration file. We have on the other side, we have actual infrastructure. And at this example, these are main cloud infrastructure providers. And in the middle, we have a Terraform. This is a command line client, which alone takes care about lifecycle of the abstract resource. And definition of definition of these resources are provided by so-called providers, some kind of Terraform plugins which have definitions of the infrastructure things. And what Terraform also have is a Terraform state file, which is some kind of internal Terraform database which stores the state. And what is the state? State is just a simple mapping between what we have in code, between these resources defined in code, and the resources defined on our actual infrastructure. I like to say that is what Terraform knows about infrastructure. Thanks to that, And thanks to that, that Terraform is declarative, we could not only create but also modify and delete things simply by changing the code, and we don't need to create a specific code for each of these situations. And what is very important also to us is that we are able to write a Terraform code, import our already existing infrastructure into Terraform, and from that point manage it using Terraform. Last but not least, it's something which addressing our biggest concern. It's a consistency. Is that ability that we could use our configuration as a template and configure it by passing some variables and have consistent instances. So where we are now? Now we have 23 data lake instances. New environment creation takes us about 4 hours instead of 2 weeks, which is a huge improvement. And most of that time is still waiting for the review, not the actual creating infrastructure, which takes some minutes. Also, now creation new environment is on-demand ad hoc support procedure made by one person in the team, not by the whole team. So it gives us a lot of flexibility. And finally, we have unified environments by using templates. Of course, we are managing also a lot of different stuff using Terraform. And frankly speaking, I cannot imagine my daily work without that tool. But you know what? Using infrastructure as a code tool by the team like mine is obvious. Probably many of you could ask question right now, why should I care about it if I'm not a DevOps or the cloud engineer? I believe that infrastructure as a code should be a common practice in broadly understand computer science right now. It should be part of our craft. No matter if you are a developer, data scientist, machine learning specialist, or a tester. Of course, we shouldn't use infrastructure as a code approach everywhere. Sometimes it's a waste, but you will get most of the infrastructure as a code benefits if you only have something more than one instance. And I believe that everybody here has at least development and production one instance of your application or workflow. So you could use the infrastructure as a code. I am convinced about it. But why you should choose Terraform to implement that? I think it's because Terraform can manage a lot of things, not only cloud infrastructure on GCP or on AWS. It also could manage a lot of different stuff in our IT world. For example, Git repositories. Many teams in Ocado managed their GitLab repository settings using Terraform. Also, monitoring and alerting in Neuralink could be configured using Terraform. You could configure PagerDuty also. There are many other things which could be done using Terraform, and what you need to check is only providers list. And if there aren't provider for your application, you could always create custom one and write it in Go. So you could manage your own application using Terraform, because why not? But the biggest, in my opinion, the biggest reason why to choose Terraform is that it's easy to use. And we have a story that proves that people, even without previous experience with Terraform, can successfully use Terraform and like it. So, long story short, at some point we enforced almost all users in our department to use Terraform, because we created a single repository with where we put all configuration for GCP projects, for GCP project permissions. We generated a code based on existing resources. We imported it into Terraform, and from now, if you want to change permission on GCP side, you had to create merge request, which has to be reviewed by our team. And then, if we are okay with the changes, we then applied it via our continuous integration pipeline. The reason why we are doing that, it's a topic for a completely different presentation, but what we have learned here and how it looks like from the end user perspective, let's consider an example. Here it is, another Terraform code. Definition of a browser, of the people who has browser role on some project. What do you have to do if you want to add someone to that list? It's just simple copy pasting and changing the names. Like here, Jan Nowak is now browser. It's simple. It's not a rocket science. And then, after the pushing the changes, you could just check our continuous integration pipeline when the plan steps are performed, check the execution plan, and then if we are okay with the changes, we're just applying it manually after reviewing that stuff. And it works very well. People even like it and started to using Terraform in their projects for managing completely different things, so the tool is okay. And also, people started to create a lot of templates to increase our consistency in our projects even more. But what we have learned during that time, like you probably noticed, single project for managing everything won't scale. It's obvious. Now fortunately it's divided, and people and teams have their own a lot of smaller repositories when they manage their stuff. When the only GCP provides needed features, we almost immediately divided it. But the biggest lesson is that it's very easy to use Terraform if assuming that someone creates you an infrastructure for test and apply changes, like in our example, continuous integration pipeline. So that's our lessons for now. So what we are planning next? Of course, we are constantly improving our infrastructure because it's a never-ending story. There's always room for improvement. But what is interesting, we want to also configure our internal tooling, our internal platform applications using Terraform. So we are in the middle of creation the providers for our internal applications. So that's all from my presentation. We are at the end. I hope that you give a kind look to the Terraform, and because I believe that it could be used to make assembling your IT furniture far more easier. So thank you for joining, thank you for coming here. If you have any questions, now is the time. And if not, then catch me later over the bottle of beer. Thank you.
So maybe two. So thank you for presentation, really nice. So I really like Terraform as well. So my understanding is that you use Terraform for multi-cloud, so AWS and Google Cloud. And what else than Terraform? Because pure Terraform, probably not. What kind of wrapper you use above this? How you, or maybe you use pure Terraform? I'm talking about some tagging, some configuration on different environments, so probably you use something on top of.
Frankly speaking, not yet. Long story short is that we are using mostly Terraform for GCP world. AWS is managed, if I probably by CloudFormation, but because it was even earlier than Terraform came. Now probably we could choose Terraform even for that. We are using raw Terraform right now. We are not using TerraGround, but we are looking at it because if we have these 23 instances when we are passing the very similar variables, when there's only some things which varies between environments, we could always look at it, but currently we are not using it. And as you probably notice, we are using it only the command line client. We are not using Terraform Enterprise right now for managing it.
I'm just curious, what version of Terraform?
Probably almost the newest one, 1.15, I believe, right now.
Because it's always challenging with upgrades. In
Yeah, that's true. I really suggest using TFenv or something like that to manage it, because the updating Terraform versions is a terrible, terrible thing.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, this Terraform tool looks like a really nice thing and really helpful. And the progress was amazed, because from 2 weeks we get only 4 hours, even less in some cases. But I'm interested how the backstage of creating it and implementing it looks like. How many time it takes, how many assets, and yeah, it's a lot of work, and it was a painful or quite not?
Obviously, if we have big infrastructure at the beginning, starting to use it, it's a little painful at the beginning. But Terraform can only manage part of your infrastructure, so we are doing step by step. At the beginning, we are focusing on the creation of new environments. We are importing the already existing environments in Terraform later. Does it take so much time? I believe that if we follow the old step, it will take even more. And we are very happy that we are using it now, because if we are now producing, if we are now introducing anything new to our platform, to our instances, we are doing it for almost for free on our all 23 instances. So I don't think that it's very difficult to learn thing, and it's very good thing to learn and invest.
Yeah, thanks.
Hey, just one question came to my mind, maybe a little bit fun, but is it possible to create Terraform deployment with Terraform?
Just a good question. Probably does, because you could you have some kind of funny providers which could just run any command on your computer, on your VM machine. So it's probably to run Terraform itself from Terraform perspective. But it's a very tricky question. We didn't do that things. We didn't things like that.
Okay, thank you.